1920s, some interesting things occurred. The rail service flourished. There was a significant flood in the Arkansas River, which got lots of national publicity. Two world champions were from Colorado. The heavyweight boxing champion, Jack Dempsey, was highly visible. A lot of people don't realize that in the 1920s, many of the fights were held in Pueblo, Colorado. And people would commute from New York to Chicago to Pueblo to Los Angeles. And also the world wrestling champion was Everett Marshall. He was from La Junta. And there was a lot of visibility about Colorado and people traveling by rail to get here. And the Denver Municipal Airport opened in that time frame. 1930, the automobile travel started to flourish, and Aspen and Winter Park for the first time started to offer commercial skiing. So the awareness of Colorado and the breadth of awareness continued to grow. 1940s, United Airlines provided the first service to Denver, and many of the U.S. veterans, perhaps some of you in the room, began to relocate in Colorado after World War II. In the 1950s, because population growth was outstripping the supply of Front Range water, many of the major water projects were built, which directly impacted our ability to support and sustain tourism. The Air Force Academy opened, and President Dwight Eisenhower spent a lot of time coming in and out of Colorado because he married Mamie Dowd, who was from Denver, and many people believe that that was the genesis of the superhighway phenomenon, because it was difficult to get to and from Denver from Kansas, which is where Dwight Eisenhower was from. And in the 1960s, the state population was 2 million people. And this gives you a little bit of a sense of what the early Colorado airline service looked like. But we were increasingly benefiting from the transportation phenomenon. Railroad was now being eclipsed by air service. In the 60s and 80s, the air service flourished. There were a number of things that took place. The Denver Broncos were started. Broadmoor hosted some world championships. Colorado Ski Country was started, which did a lot of private marketing throughout the world. In the 1970s, some of you perhaps remember that the IOC initially selected Denver for the 76 Olympics. And then after a statewide vote, that was turned down, very controversial, but rightly or wrongly got us a lot of visibility as a destination for skiing. McNichols Arena opened, Eisenhower Tunnel opened, Michener's novel Centennial was published. Lots of things giving increasingly lots of visibility to Colorado. And President Ford established a part-time residence at Beaver Creek. Increasingly, we had a number of regional airports. In fact, to this day, Colorado, on a per capita basis, has probably more airplane service in more disparate airports than any state in the country. I mean, if you drive from Grand Junction over to Alamosa, you will pass 5 or 6 airports that those of us on the Front Range seldom realize that they have a direct service coming in from Atlanta, from Dallas, from Los Angeles, and that has benefited us greatly as it relates to tourism. 1980, state population approximately 3 million. The Broadmoor increasingly kind of represented the quality of lodging that was available. Going all the way back to Mesa Verde, the quality of lodging had improved dramatically. And instead of people just coming to live here, we got to a point where approximately 80% of the people that come to Colorado are not from Colorado. We frequently, on a snapshot of the ski season, we will have more people skiing in Colorado from Texas than we will from Colorado. And that inbound phenomenon has continued to flourish primarily because of the accessibility to airports. In the 1980s through 2000, in the 1980s, the first tourism tax was passed in the state. It was a sales tax of 1%. The Colorado Tourism Board was created, national advertising, and our share of inbound tourism increased dramatically. Some of you will recall that Exxon had spent a fair amount of money over in the Parachute area, and Black Friday occurred in 1982 when they shut down that huge development. But the Science and Cultural Facilities District and the new Colorado Convention Center came out of the 1980s, again expanding the reach for tourism in the state of Colorado. In the 90s, the Tabor Amendment was approved. The Colorado Tourism Tax was defeated in the polls. The Colorado Tourism Board was abolished. At the same time, we hosted Pope John Paul II. We had the Summit of 8, and a number of activities which population was 4.3 million. And I think most of you recall who this gentleman is. Over the course of the last 11 years, a number of things have occurred in the tourism area. Invesco Field opened. There was extensive use of the internet because there was not adequate funding to advertise Colorado. But in spite of that, our tourism market remained largely static because of rising competition both internationally as well as other domestic states. A new visitor center was built at Red Rocks. There was renewed tourism support from the Colorado legislature and from Governor Bill Owens. There was the opening of the expanded convention center, and there was the approval of SCFD, as well as Southwest Airlines came into DIA, providing significantly greater lift from different smaller markets. 2008, depending on your politics, it was either a very good thing or a very bad thing, but it got us a lot of visibility internationally with the Democratic National Convention. And our tourism and convention market share started to slowly expand again. And then in 2011, the Broadmoor hosted the U.S. Women's Golf Open. Colorado hosted a little over 12 million skier days. And new skier growth, or I should say new tourism growth, is in areas that many people had not even thought about. New bicycling events, wine tours, soccer, lacrosse, hot air ballooning, photographic safaris, etc. And the state population is approximately 5 million. And I think perhaps over the course of the last 30 years or so, the most significant thing that's occurred in tourism has been the building of DIA. We are absolutely viewed as having the best airport in the world, and it continues to work extremely well, even though we initially had significant problems with our baggage handling. I wanted to tell you a story about when I was at the Chamber. We had brought in the Wall Street Journal, which was obviously a terrific entity to kind of talk about how great our new airport was. And we flipped the switch on the baggage handling system. This is before it had been pre-tried. And the first bags come around, and they come around and turn, and at a rate of about 50 miles an hour, they slam into a concrete wall. And the fellow from the Wall Street Journal looks at me, he says, that's really very efficient, or you've got a damn problem. And I said, I think it's me. And that was the beginning of some of the challenges that we had with DIA. Where is tourism today? It's Colorado's second largest industry. 138,000 jobs and approximately $9.7 billion in annual visitor spending. 55 million visitors in 2010. And the state's market share remains relatively flat, not because the state and the legislature has not responded, but by their response over the course of the last decade, it has been enough for us largely to maintain our position as the international and other markets such as Florida, California, and Texas have dramatically increased their market. There are approximately $700 million in state and local expenditures that are gained from tourism. And I think a very interesting statistic is that tourism expenditures currently save every Colorado family approximately $364 in annual taxes. So it's kind of a subsidy for people that come, visit, and leave, which at a time when nobody wants to talk about increasing taxes on those of us that live here, we should always take into consideration this somewhat free tax that we receive from our visitors. The beauty of the state still remains. Though I can tell you in the area of economic development, which I've spent much of my career in, the beauty of the state is no longer quite as sexy as it was in the 60s and 70s. Increasingly, places like Texas, in spite of their weather, are offering subsidies to companies that are dramatically greater than the state of Colorado. I'm not suggesting we should increase our subsidies, but it's important to remember that tourism is the best introduction to economic development, and that's one of the few ways that we're able to really compete with places like Texas, and Oklahoma, and New Mexico, who seemingly are giving it away over the course of the last few years. So where are we currently with regard to our assets and our challenges? We continue to have terrific scenic appeal, wonderful history, sites and exploration options, terrific transportation and lodging, unlimited activities,